Welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast. Join us each week as sports scientist and founder of Athletica AI, Dr. Paul Laursen, athlete, coach, and sports scientist Marjaana Rakai, coach and cyclist Paul Warloski, and everyday athletes discuss training, racing, and improving health and fitness. Get ready for your journey to peak performance. Hello and welcome to the Athlete's Compass podcast, where we navigate training, fitness, and health for everyday athletes. We have a very special guest today, author and athlete Matt Fitzgerald. Matt has an extensive and impressive career in endurance sports as an author, coach, nutritionist, and athlete. He has written over 30 books, including popular titles like 80-20 Running, How Bad Do You Want It, and his latest, How to Run the Perfect Race, Better Racing Through Better Pacing. His work is widely recognized in the endurance sports community, and he frequently contributes to publications such as Runner's World, Triathlete, and Outside. In addition to his writing, Matt is a certified sports nutritionist. He's also the co-founder of 80-20 Endurance, a leading provider of training plans for endurance athletes, and the creator of the Dream Run Camp in Flagstaff, Arizona. Matt, I hope you get a little bump in your royalties this month. I bought 3 of your books, and after reading them, want to get back into running. So I appreciate it.
Right on. Thank you.
Welcome. So Matt, let's start off right away. You're an investor in Athletica.ai. What do you see in Athletica, and why did you choose to invest?
I've seen AI coming for a while. I mean, probably I was just more tuned into its advent than maybe the average citizen, partly because I have an older brother who's a science geek who would teach me about it. And then also because I just have like an abiding interest in neuroscience and the brain. And of course, AI is like trying to, we're trying to create a silicon brain essentially. And then, in my milieu in the endurance sports space, I just seemed to me inevitable that AI was going to reach a level of maturity where it could start, providing real value in the endurance space. And just started scanning about, and then suddenly the wave hit, right? And like it's coming, and now it's here. And yeah, it seemed like a lot of things were happening simultaneously, which put me in an advantageous position because I could talk to a lot of people, kick a lot of tires, make a lot of comparisons, and partly part of it, it's not really so much like picking a winner and getting rich, but like wanting to be, I've always wanted to be like at the forefront of innovation and just, it's what my entire career has been about in a way, is like just being a step ahead. Athletic, I think, is a step ahead of the pack. I really liked that, one of the co-founders, Paul, is a coach, an athlete, an exercise physiologist. I think that's important. No matter how much you know about computers, you can't necessarily make a good AI app that just makes sense. You have to know the sport. Paul knows the sport, and that was a difference maker for me.
You write in How to Run the Perfect Race this, quote, "Pacing is everything in competitive distance running. I mean it, everything. It is the sports-defining characteristic, the singular quiddity that makes distance running different from all other sports and exercise activities, including other forms of running." First of all, Matt, congratulations on getting a word like quiddity, meaning a distinctive feature, into that sentence. Second, could you explain a little more of what you mean?
Yeah, if you just compare, distance, like competitive distance running, and you can toss in any and all endurance sports. But that book does focus on running. So if you compare that discipline to because not everyone who runs is a competitive distance runner. You take sprinters on one end, they run, they compete, they do not pace, right? So I mean, I think for me, by definition, a sprint is any race that's short enough not to require pacing in order to minimize completion time. So obviously, like distance running there's just a line somewhere, right, where pacing becomes a necessary technique or method to minimize completion time, which is the goal of any race. And then you have other people who run, they're not sprinters, but they don't run competitively. They might run for their health or weight management or stress relief, or it's a social thing or a way of communing with nature. That is also running, but that is not necessarily paced, at least not in the same way. You're not trying to thread the needle of, completing, 42.2 kilometers in the least time possible. The pacing element is, the one thing that makes competitive distance running different from other forms of running, and then really by extension, other sports.
Yeah, well, I'll just chime in just saying it's just kind of the whole concept of pacing, and the fact simply that the decisions that you make on race day are, I guess to the book's point, that they can be a defining characteristic in how well you're going to go, right? And I think we've all had epic fails in our pacing, and we learn through experience. But yeah, gaining knowledge and understanding, and actually like really putting some thought into this, it actually makes a massive difference in your time and ultimately your enjoyment on race day as well. Wouldn't you say, Matt?
Definitely. I mean, it's like, I think, you ask any runner off the street, is like pacing important, and you'll get a nod. But I think, most athletes, they don't. Then you ask them, like, are you good at pacing? And then the answer is very likely to be no. And then you ask them, what are you doing about it? And the answer is going to be some version of like just sort of vaguely hoping it fixes itself. It's like people know it's important. They probably don't recognize just how important. And then it's not receiving quite the emphasis that it merits.
One of the things that I took from the book, thank you for sending us those, was that there's a difference in wanting to and being able to. Like we all want to run a certain time, right? But we can't will through it. Like there are physiological limitations what we can actually do, and kind of like creating a plan for yourself. And you wrote about thinking firstly about your pace and then the time, instead of what I would say a lot of new to running or new to distance running, they think about, okay, this is the time that I want to achieve, without thinking too much of the pace and if that's realistic. So that was one of the things that I took from the book, and also that anyone can be a pacing master. Can you talk to us about the sentence that you wrote about anyone can be a pacing master?
Yeah. I mean, for me, like that's how I view my role as a coach. Is like I'm trying to move athletes toward mastery of the sport, and mastery. To me, it does not mean you're faster than everyone else, because, I mean, that's nice, but that makes everything, that makes your goal hinge on a lot of things you don't control. And so for mastery is actually when you have just achieved your full potential. It's like, potential is kind of baked in at conception. But like, you could have a lot of potential and just get in your own way and self-limit and only, realize, half of that potential. Whereas someone else could be born with a lot less potential, but, by virtue of like figuring out how to control the controllable elements, they reach their full potential, and there's just deep satisfaction in that. I mean, I put myself in that category. I was lifelong endurance athlete. Knew, when I was a kid, I wasn't going to the Olympics, but still, like I cared about it enough to just want to see what my ultimate limit was. So that's the journey I had, and I think it was just incredibly fulfilling, and so as a coach, I'm trying to offer that to other athletes, and so there you have it, right? I mean that is simply a true statement. Like, in a race of 40,000 people, someone who finishes 20,789th could actually be the best pacer in the entire race. So for me, like looking at it that way is very democratizing. It gives you something to work on. Something that is very satisfying to make progress in, that is not in no way hinges on things you can't control.
So when you talk about self limits, what do you specifically mean by runners self-limiting themselves?
Yeah, it happens in myriad ways. Like, here at Dream Run Camp, I've got, two houses full of visiting runners, and they're just cycling in and cycling out all the time. I interact with a lot of runners, and almost all of them, probably all of them, self-limit in one way or another. It could be, a common one is just self-doubt, just undercutting yourself with self-doubt. Another one is, technological dependency. I mean, that one is just like an epidemic these days. And I get into that in the book, where athletes just sort of like they cede control for their development to a device, which you just can't do. Your device cannot fulfill your potential. It's on you. So it's a very long list of it's highly individual, specific ways in which athletes self-limit. My thing was impatience. I did a lot of things right as an athlete, but I would I would create problems that didn't have to come about because I would get impatient.
Yeah, I can totally relate to the impatience and technological, like the watches. But I had a little bit of revelation this weekend. I was doing a 20K run, and usually I start way too hard. Like, I want to hit the targets, right? So I usually start a little too fast, and then I fade. But then after reading the book, I'm like, okay, I need to like really mentally like check myself and try to negative split. So start slow. And I was running 4.5K loops, and I started really slowly, like holding back, and it felt like, oh, this is super slow. And I timed each loop, and I actually like felt really good the longer I ran, and I negative split it, halfway through. So it was really like, hey, I think I need to take this with me to my racing and just start really patiently and conservatively, which I typically don't do, and then I fade. So that was a revelation for me.
Excellent.
Matt, I've forgotten the name of the. I read it last night, but there was I think it was a Badwater 100-miler guy who'd won that, and then he went to UTMB, and kind of basically he raced hard and kind of with guts, Steve Prefontaine kind of like, and then that just didn't work at UTMB, and he kind of got a lot of DNFs kind of thing. Racing with that ego, racing with those guts, and then he finally took it a different way, and he raced almost too slow at the end, kind of like what you're talking about there, Marjaana, where you're just like, okay, let's just go slower this time and build into it. And of course, his story is that he won that way with that sort of new method, and it kind of speaks to the journey, I think, that so many of us are on, probably even yourself, Matt. I know myself, I used to race with ego, with big, absolute time goals first. And there's the old adage when you speak in the Ironman culture, I just killed the bike, I don't know what happened in the run, right? you hear it all the time, right? And I think, if you're a listener right now and, any of this kind of sinks in, you go, oh, maybe I should sort of think about this a little bit deeper, and maybe I can hold back a little bit. And again, it's part of that whole journey and finding out sort of what's optimal. Of course, you can speed that up too, right? If you start to look at a little bit of the science, use other various tools. We're working on some in Athletica as well that can help you to see where those paces are. But I don't know. I'm just, it's a journey. I guess that's kind of my point. I think it's hard to get this right out of the gates.
I mean, who even knows what the title of the book is How to Run the Perfect Race, but that's actually indefinable. Like, you can't, there's nothing you can measure that like proves indisputably that like that was a perfect race. You know what I mean? So I think, for me, I started running competitively at age 11, kept at it to 49 when long COVID took me out. That's decades where I just felt like I was getting better and better and better and better at pacing. So I don't think there's any arrival point. And it's important to understand, because if you're expecting perfection, it's going to be frustrating. So you need to focus on just, getting better. And that can start today.
I want to reel back science into this. You see, you have a short section about sports science, how pacing is related or not related to science, and I think it was so beautiful because there's this whole theory of feeling of effort, connected emotions, and how we just can't will our way to run faster. And you referred to Dr. Tim Noakes' theory about the central governor, that our brain is regulating how much effort we can put in. But you also bring in Dr. Samuel Marcora's work, which proposed that endurance athletes pull the plug when either the goal is met or two, they decide the effort to keep pushing is just too much. So instead of the central limiter or physical limiter, endurance performance is limited by a feeling. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of like the rest of the answer to your opening question, about running being pacing being the singular quiddity that makes competitive distance running different from other things. So yeah, my colloquial definition of pacing specific to racing is the art of finding your limit. Like, that's what you're trying to do, is find your limit. So then it's like, okay, what is the limit? That's where things get really interesting, because if you take like a lot of other sports, like the limit is obvious, like going back to sprinting, you can't move your legs any faster, right? You can't apply any more directional force to the ground. Very simple limiters. They're just staring you in the face. With endurance sports, it's different. Like, it's really hard to identify exactly. Look at it this way. Like, say you're running a marathon and you're pacing it well. And I just pull up alongside you on a mountain bike and ask you at 10K, like, could you run faster? Like, the answer is yes. I pull up alongside you at 20K. Could you run faster? The answer is yes. So where's the limit there? Like, so the limit is there, but it's not that direct. Like, you could choose at any point in a longer race to speed up, presumably until you hit the finish. And so, like, that's your limit. Like, you're just like making a choice not to go any faster than you are, in the hope that when you hit the gas pedal when you're within sight of the finish line, you get what I call an underwhelming finishing kick, where you've threaded the needle so perfectly that you neither lose speed nor are able to really speed up much when nothing matters anymore and you can empty the tank.
Yeah, and in the long run, like talking about ultra marathon even, that you're gonna have these ebbs and flows where you feel okay, and then next moment you feel just trash and you want to quit, but somehow you always just like kind of find your next flow. So it's like, and then you read some stories about these crazy ultra runners that can't see, they're hallucinating, and they still keep going like in the dark down the mountain, like So it's really interesting how some people can push through where others would quit.
There's a lot there for sure. But I think the mind is always making these calculations at some level, right? Consciously or subconsciously, in terms of like the mind knows the end goal, right? And that should be pretty locked in. And then it's like you said, the ebb and flow. You're always kind of you're trying to connect that endpoint to enable the fastest, shortest possible time, right? And you're always kind of, and then to the central governor model, there's always these, there's these, millions of afferent signals that are kind of coming through about, energy status, muscle, pain, any resources that are on board, potentially, pH levels, and on it kind of goes, hydration status, etc. And then there's probably some form of memory that's involved in this as well, where
Yep.
it's like you've got, to Matt's example, right, where he went from 11 to 49, and there's a whole bunch of memory that's kind of instilled in that allows him to learn and be better time after time after time, right? So that the pacing gets better and better and more refined. So yeah, lots of science going on. Is just an absolutely fascinating topic. I think I could talk for days on it.
Yeah, I could write an entire book about it.
You could. You did. Make sure you get it, folks. It's a beauty. It's a beauty.
After reading the book, I used that concept of the steady pacing with several of my athletes doing long events, including one doing a 12-hour mountain bike race and one doing a half Ironman. They both raced their personal best and felt strong throughout the races. And you write in the book, the goal of racing is to find one's limit and superior body awareness enjoyed by experienced and high-level athletes that make them better to feel their way to the limit in competition. So what are some ways that everyday athletes can learn this body awareness?
That's where the rubber meets the road, right? And I have so much fun with this as a coach. And it really is like fun. Like a lot of the actual like tools that you integrate into training to get better at pacing. They're ways of gamifying and making like turning a mere workout into a deliberate practice. So just to throw a couple of examples at you. One that I like to do is called blinded fartleks. I actually have an athlete this morning who did a version of this, and that an example might be you're going to do 10 times 1 minute surges in an otherwise easy session, and if it's a run, they could be like at 5K race pace, except that you're not allowed to look at your watch either to judge the time or to dial in the pace. So you just hit your lap button. You run for what you think is about a minute, or what you think is exactly a minute at exactly 5K pace. Hit the lap button again. You're allowed to look then just to see how you did, and then you get 9 more bites at the apple, and you just try to get better at you're just there's no net, there's no life preserver. You're just thrown in, and you do the best you can. That would be one. So you're just just these exercises just force you to be more present. It's very easy compared to other sports. It's very easy in endurance sports just to not even really be there doing the work, especially if you're really depending on technology. So those types of exercises, they just kind of force you to be present and to pay attention. And that is the alchemy. Like that, it doesn't matter if you just completely botch it. Like as long as you're making a good faith effort to get it right. And I do like to see some progress over the course of the session, not just across sessions. And then another one I like a lot and use a lot is stretch intervals. My kind of go-to format for that is like 8 to 10 times 30 seconds hard up a hill. And there you would, the idea is you have to cover slightly more distance in each repetition after the first. You can't game the system by walking the first rep. So you have plenty of room for, 7 to 9 more increases. So I like to have people run with brightly colored socks, run the first 30 seconds, hard, but just a lot of this is really cognitive. You're trying to just think about, all right, what's the hardest effort I can sustain in this first rep that allow me to cover more distance 7 to 9 more times, and drop a sock at the end of 30 seconds, go back down the hill, run up, this much harder, and see if you can drop the sock 5 to 10 feet further on, and repeat that. Pick up the first sock, keep going. And that one, someone who's just like a true pacing master. Part of what makes them so masterful at that skill is like they don't just have like slow, medium, and fast. They have like where others are using like a 3-point scale, they're using a 100-point scale. And stretch intervals, they get you to start thinking about very fine gradations in perceived effort and also perceived velocity. And again, it's okay if you botch your first set of stretch intervals, but if you're at least making that good faith effort, you'll get something out of it and do better than the next time you try it.
Again, you make a really important point that we can be a little bit too focused with our technological tools on the pacing. I remember reading those sections, and I completely agree that we can be too focused, but at the same time, we can also use them for learning as well.
Yep.
And just in terms of some basics, if a GPS is providing pace, a minute per kilometer, minute per mile kind of pace and stuff, and attuning yourself. I love actually even playing games with my technology in the past, right, where I can actually kind of try to guess what pace I'm going at right now, and then seeing how close my mind is to recognize, to what the GPS might be kind of saying. And we have to give credit to our AI guru with Athletica, Dr. Andrea Zignoli, where he has invented this new parameter that we're calling workout reserve. And what this does in Athletica is it looks at your history over the last 6 weeks of your movement speed history. And we're basically just leveraging the exercise intensity or pace in this case versus the time, right? And we can always capture and gather what the average is. They're called mean maximal paces or mean maximal powers. You could have a mean maximal pace for 2 hours, right? Say that's an 8-minute mile or whatever it might be for you, versus a sprint, right, where you might be running 15, or what is the reverse? 15 miles in a minute, whatever it might be, right? You're getting that that shape of that curve, and it's always it's within the algorithm that's sitting within your watch, so you can actually watch how much reserve you have, whether it is 1 minute versus whether it is 2 hours, kind of thing. And I know a lot of us, like Marjaana, for example, we use this little tool to see how much is kind of sitting in the tank. And we believe it can also be helpful for potentially for racing as well. And Marjaana, I'm not sure if you want to just talk about your experience with Workout Reserve.
Yeah, it's been really helpful because we tend to forget what we have done. Like, you don't have that like pace memory. You have a certain type of I know I've done this, but when you're in the moment, and especially if you're running in the heat or you're super fatigued, you kind of like forget what you've been able to do. And then when you have this workout reserve on your watch, you can check, oh, it's closing to 0. That means I'm running really good today, even might not always feel like you're running at your best pace the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just to give yourself a visualization, if you start on anything, it'll start at 100%. But depending on how fast you go, or how hard you push on your bike and the power, that really kind of looks at the speed at which it falls from 100% down to 0. And then if it goes negative, it means you're going faster than or harder than you've ever gone before. You're having kind of a breakthrough workout. But and it's just one extra kind of variable, but it's looking at your last 6 weeks ultimately, which is good. I think it's like, you shouldn't be going down to 0 too quick if you if something's kind of important for you. You're going to be potentially in trouble. You should have like a gradual fall down towards that, so that the time point kind of fits alongside with the end goal sort of thing.
I'm glad you brought up the technology piece, because it is like, a major theme of the book. And, the straw man version of my thesis is, technology's bad, throw your watch in the ocean. And like that is not my message. It's like, I think athletes basically they can do 3 things with technology. It can be a crutch, and that's what it is for, I would say, the vast majority of endurance athletes. It can be a tool. And there's a crucial difference between a tool and a crutch. Like a tool is useful without creating a dependency. And then option 3 would be just don't use technology. And so of those three options, I am not telling athletes don't use technology. I'm telling them turn it from a crutch into a tool. And that's that to me, the proper use of tech in endurance training is to cultivate the self-regulatory expertise that is the be all end all of endurance performance. The buck stops with you. And it's like the analogy I make is, as a rider, like a thesaurus. A thesaurus can be a crutch for a rider who has a terrible vocabulary and like never knows the right word. But if you use it right, a thesaurus can, help you develop. And so the proper use of it is actually weaning yourself of dependency on it. So, I've been writing longer than I've been running. And I still consult a thesaurus, but the way I use it is very, very different. Now I'm much further along in my development as a writer. And so I think, what's exciting about what you're doing at Athletica and what's happening in other spaces, not enough yet, is like, some people who are behind some of these innovative tools get this. And, right now, I look around left, right, and center, and I see devices like almost like going out of their way to foster dependency. And like we don't have to stay there. Just because something is an advanced piece of technology does not mean it has to do that. So when like good sound coaching principles are factored into the design of some of these tools, then like really exciting things can happen, because like you get to use the technology. It can do incredible things, but it's actually helping the athlete develop their own self-regulatory ability. And so, yeah, I'm psyched to see where it's going.
So most of our athletes are longer distance, the runners or triathletes, from half marathon up to marathon or Ironman distance. How would you call somebody who is quite new to longer distance, where pacing actually matters a lot, to use technology as a tool as they prepare for their races?
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed some of those ways. So much of what you're doing is, just calibrating internal perceptions against objective, external metrics. And those little guessing games. It's like one thing I've found. I think actually like a rigorous scientific survey would confirm my suspicion here, that like athletes who just have a knack for pacing, they play these games without anyone prompting them. They just come up with them because it just seems natural, because there's like a deep it feels like a game, but it also feels like turning a mere body activity into a body mind activity and a deliberate practice. So yeah, there's all kinds of ways you can do that. I'm just trying to think of like another one. Like, one that I like is what I call precision splitting. And that is where you just pick like a super specific, this works for distance-based repetitions. So it could be, one I like is like 12 to 16 times 300 meters at critical velocity. So something that is like relatively short reps given the intensity, so that you can get a lot of reps. And then like you say, okay, you're trying to hit 85.42 seconds. Take it right down to the 100th. And it's like you get 12 tries to hit 85.42 seconds. And then it just, again, it's engaging you, because you have to feel what you're doing. You have to perceive your movement through space and your level of effort, but you're also, technology is a crucial part of that design, right? And so you would want to see a movement toward like bullseyes as that workout unfolds. There's just like there's so like another one I like is what I call mini intervals, and that's where you make the intervals ridiculously short relative to the intensity. So it could be 100 times 20 seconds at half marathon pace, and because like one of the defaults for people who just haven't put a lot of work into getting better at pacing is like they automatically tune the effort to the duration. So if it's 20 seconds, it's a sprint. Even if the instruction clearly says half marathon pace, it's like it's 20 seconds of sprinting it. And so there's just kind of like this mindlessness that's happening. But again, you get 100 bites at the apple there. So like, as the thing unfolds, so that's so much of what's going on is like, you're just, parallel processing between like one eye on data, one eye on what you're feeling inside, and just trying to get them to line up. It really is very much a calibration process.
Well, Matt, I mean, you had me on talking to your Dream Run camp folks. Can you just tell us a little bit about Dream Run Camp, and do you do any pacing teaching throughout that camp for all the people that are coming into that you see?
Yep. So the seed for Dream Run Camp was planted in 2017 when I was living in California, but I spent the summer here in Flagstaff. And I was a fake professional runner. I was 46 years old at the time, had never been, elite performance-wise, even when I was in my physical prime. But I had this opportunity to train with the Hoka Northern Arizona Elite professional running team for 13 weeks. Ran the Chicago Marathon as a pro. At the end of that, some rules were bent, so I could do that. Wrote a book about it called Running the Dream. And it was like, I tell people it was the best 13 weeks of my life. Why wouldn't it be? Like, I created this fantasy and then went out and did it. And then Dream Run Camp is like my way of trying to, you can read the book and have the kind of vicarious experience through my eyes, but Dream Run Camp makes a version of that experience available to anyone who wants it. So it's a twist on the traditional adult running camp model. Here it's rolling attendance, so you can come anytime you want. So runners come individually whenever it works for them. So in the summer, I get a lot of college students and teachers. I get a lot of international athletes, all ages, all abilities, but they get to like the minimum stay is 1 week, and you can stay for up to 12 weeks, which is basically an entire training block. Mm-hmm. And so we have two houses. The main house has like everything a runner could possibly want: hyperbaric chamber, full commercial quality gym, spa, pool, sauna, you name it. And then I have kind of a team of special service providers around me: dietitian, mental performance coach, strength coach, physio, all that. And so you just get to like go all in on your identity as a runner. And we welcome triathletes too. And so for me, like sort of the mission statement is it's on a poster on a wall here. The mission statement of Dream Run Camp is let your passion, not your ability, decide how far you go. So the idea is like, if you love your sport and you just want to see how good you could be, like you can be, like nothing should get in the way of it. It shouldn't matter that you're not that gifted, or you're newer to the sport, or you're 65 years old, or whatever it is. Like like none of those from where I said, none of those are good reasons not to go for it.
That's awesome. And it truly is for the everyday athlete, right? So it's like basically the everyday athlete can almost have that elite athlete experience.
Yep.
I'll just confirm that. Like I was, when I was giving a chat to your group, I was having great questions right around the table, and we were spinning around, and it didn't look like an Olympic program there. Like it was, there was just it's just everyone was there, and but what a cool concept. I don't know anything else like it in the world. So if you're listening to this, this sounds kind of exciting for you, and training, running, triathlon is your passion, definitely encourage you to check that out for an amazing experience.
Thank you for
that.
that.
We'll put all those links in the show notes as well.
Based on extensive experience as a coach, and I think you mentioned in the book about gender differences and being better at pacing than men. Can you talk to us more about that? Why are women better at pacing?
Yeah, I mean that is like, that's not Matt's opinion. There's like empirical support for that claim. Obviously, that's a very broad statement, and but it does seem to be generally true. And if you look at like broader research on sex differences in psychology, men as a result of testosterone and whatever else, tend to be more risk taking. And women like tend to be more risk averse, at least with like certain categories of decisions. And so I think it's less a factor with shorter distances, but when you get up to the ones where like the wall is a factor, like marathons, statistically speaking, women are much less likely to lose steam like in the last 5 to 10K of a marathon than men are. And it's just because like they're being more cautious, more conservative. Another way of saying that is they're being smarter because they actually do end up, getting closer to a perfect race that way. There's a place for risk taking, but for me, like, I walked a portion of my first marathon. I walked a portion of my second marathon because I'm a man. I didn't learn anything from the first one.
Yeah. Do you see that in training as well, or does it come like the risk averse? Does it come a factor in racing only? Or can you tell the difference in training and racing?
I mean, that's where I think I'm not sure what empirical support. I mean, because you only have one mind that you take everywhere you go. So I mean, that sort of like that basic difference would have to manifest in one way or another in training. It could be like, it'd be interesting to do a study on like training through pain, and are there differences across any demographic, like in who pushes more stupidly through pain and who is more cautious and lives to fight another day. I'm sure you would find some differences there.
I'm not convinced that there's a gender issue there, though. Like training,
maybe not.
It's probably personality.
I mean, a lot of it is also because I've taken for another project a really deep dive into like the science of personality. And there for sure, like, I mean, there's like one trait that's called boldness, and boldness is tolerance for risk. So and it tends to be innate. Like a lot of our personality traits are like a function of like nuclear family dynamics and childhood. But boldness, like if you had a child who at like 18 months was crawling out of their crib in the middle of the night, like, just, falling 5 feet to the floor, not really caring, not crying, heading straight to the kitchen, like that child is bold. They'll probably have a pretty high pain tolerance or pain threshold when they become an endurance athlete later on. So I mean, you definitely see the spectrum in terms of like, what the variables are that actually are determinative. Personality for sure is going to be one.
We would really love it if you could kind of almost take on the key points that maybe someone can take. This whole, the theme of the podcast, we've been everywhere, but the theme of the podcast has really been around your book, How to Run the Perfect Race, and in pacing. And could you maybe just kind of summarize what are the key pacing points that an athlete should work on, the everyday athlete should work on?
Yeah, I mean, in as much as I'm trying to get buy-in from athletes to like go down this road, the way I frame it is, when you run a race, you show up with a certain amount of fitness, and that's baked in, right? Nothing you can do about that once, race day dawns, and you worked hard for that fitness. So, if you worked hard for, $10,000, would you want to, light 20% of it on fire, like on the way to the store to buy something? Or would you rather show up with the entire $10,000 that you worked very hard to earn? Well, when you execute a race imperfectly, and pacing is most of execution in endurance sports, you're wasting a percentage of your hard-earned fitness. And there's one study I cite that puts the number at around 14%, just like through, not that you wasted 14% of your fitness, but you finished the race 14% slower than you could have with perfect pacing. So, to me, like there's just like a frugality to it. Just like don't waste your fitness, and if you want, if you're buying what I'm selling, then you just start this process where just the spoken intention is really half the battle. It's like, I am going to work on becoming a better pacer. Then you read the book, you apply the tools, you're patient, and you put progress over perfection. And it's a fun and fulfilling journey because everyone gets better. I think, like all skills, pacing is, some people just have a natural gift for it, and they start off better and they're always a little bit ahead of the rest of us, but everyone gets better with this type of approach.
Well, that is all for this week. We got through about half of the questions we had on our list. Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you for listening. Join us next week on the Athletes Compass podcast. Ask your training question in the comments and on our social media. Thank you for taking a moment to give us a 5-star review. Paul, Marjaana, and I are professional endurance sport coaches with limited availability. Contact us at the links in the show notes to set up an appointment to talk about your training. For Matt Fitzgerald, Marjaana Rakai, and Dr. Paul Laursen, I'm Paul Warloski, and this has been the Athletes Compass podcast. We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Athletes Compass podcast, your North Star through the sometimes complicated world of training for your endurance sport. For a deeper dive into the science of endurance sports, listen to the Training Science podcast and check out the adaptive AI training platform, Athletica AI. And thanks.